All right, we're recording. Steve Cotter, thanks for being on Fitness and Consciousness.
Nice to be here. Thanks a lot for having me, Ryan.
Yeah, I've been a fan of your work and stealing your moves for a long time, so I guess it's about time that I've answered for that. I first got to know about you, it might have been about 10 years ago. I got the Russian Kettlebell Challenge book, found it at the library, and it made me want to be a trainer again. I quit the training business many years before because I didn't like what I thought you had to do to be successful. And that's a whole different thing. But then I started learning about you and seeing your way of kettlebells and how it's kind of evolved over the years. So I really appreciate you having you on. This is really cool for me. And I guess where we could start is, where are you from and why did you get into fitness in the first place?
Well, where I'm from, if I say where I live, I live in San Diego. So where I'm from this planet Earth, really. So I was born in New York. I live in San Diego. I travel a lot. I spend time in different places. So I don't really put myself in a box as far as where I'm from, because it's in this world, you can move in and out from place to place. You can be from one place at one time, and then now you're in another place.
Yeah, I like that.
So as far as how I got my start, that's, I've always been fascinated by movement exploration. And so that's led me in different directions. It's led me through the martial arts, and via the martial arts, my eye caught the kettlebell, and I saw the similarity with the kettlebell and the martial arts and how it's a way to express yourself. And I like the power about the kettlebell. So, the story is a long story and it's ongoing, but basically I have my own art form. I have my own way of expressing movement. The kettlebell is a tool that it fits like your hand fits on a glove, because it can stay against the body. And then from there, it's your movement. And movement is going to be your stances, it's your posture, it's your breathing. As far as rules, there's no rules to that. We learn the basics, like this is how you stand. This is a squat. This is a push-up, a plank. This is a pulling. Those are the basic techniques you want to master. We want to master those. And most people have not mastered, many of them. Few people have mastered all of them. So even if you just focus on basics in all of your workouts, you're going to continue to get stronger, right? At the same time, there's the art part of it. The art is how someone wants to express themselves. What's going to motivate you to do your training or your workout, or you have a schedule. What's going to motivate you to keep that schedule? For me, I see the art in it. I'm not really interested in, okay, if it's a bench press, I want to get to that weight. Yes, for a period of time, I've been fixated, trying to increase the deadlift. There's nothing wrong with that. That's the foundation of developing strength. What I say is, once you have that foundation, how are you going to use it? I've always resonated more towards the martial arts. I've always resonated towards the application of, you can be strong, but can you be strong here in this position?
Yeah.
And how can you use it to create an advantage for yourself? So, but that's just me. For someone else, it's different. I have a lot of respect for. That's why I don't compare art. I don't say like kettlebells is better than powerlifting or compared to CrossFit or compared to anything, because I think each tool has its advantages. I think each tool has its specialization. And if you're going to say in a word, what's the starting point? Well, it's the body. It's not any handheld tool. You know, so for me, martial arts is always the foundation of anything that you do. Then if you want to specialize in mace, specialize in clubs, specialize in kettlebell, specialize in calisthenics, you know, barbell. At the end of it, you're trying to develop an expertise in what you're doing. So I think that every person has to develop their own way, actually, their own way of doing it.
Right. Yeah. Before we started recording, you were talking about the like strength training is like this, like loaded mobility, or the kettlebell training as loaded mobility, I believe is how you put it. And that makes a lot of sense to me. So can you talk about how the kettlebell specifically, you're talking about it like it fits on you, like it'll like fits on you like a glove. And so the kettlebell, you can do a lot of like techniques that might look awkward, or like weird things, like maybe like windmills and stuff like that. Of course, you can do it with other stuff too. But can you talk about like how, like situationally in martial arts, that the kettlebell gives you strength in these odd ways, or the power endurance, or the other skills that it builds, how it directly relates to martial art?
I give great importance to words, and words provide meaning. So when we say mobility and loaded mobility, so mobility is the ability to move. That's mobility, your ability to move, your ability to be mobile. And then you have loaded. So loaded is taking it and putting more load on top. And so before you can have loaded mobility, you have to have mobility in and of itself. It makes no sense that you're immobile and then you're going to add load. That's not going to normally make you mobile. There may be some exceptions where the range of motion, like a goblet squat, you put a light kettlebell or dumbbell in someone's hand, they'll probably be more mobile with a goblet squat than they are with a bodyweight squat, right? Simply because their alignment is poor and they would fall backwards if they were under their own. So they're using the weight to hold them up, right? So there are exceptions, but generally speaking, you would not load the body that didn't do the movement. So you have to do the movements correctly. So that's footwork. Where do you place your feet? Where's your center of mass in relation to the base of support? What is the base of support? And then where's your mass relative to that? So that's your balance. And then the mobility is the steps. So the angle of the step and how you're transferring your weight, right? So that's to be mobile. And then the kettlebell, it sits against the body. It sits against the hand, sits against the frame. So when I'm like this, I have the kettlebell here. And the same thing when you're overhead, even though you're overhead, it's hanging. It's hanging. Even when the kettlebell's overhead here, it's hanging over you. So any type of movement that you want to do, you can move around that central axis. The kettlebell becomes an extension of your spine in a sense. It's the combined center of mass. They have your center of mass. You have the mass of the bell, of the implement that you're holding has its own mass. So it's that combined center of mass. And then the relationship with the base of support. But if you're mobile, you're stepping, the base of support can change at any point, but the relationship doesn't change, because the relationship is the vertical alignment. So as long as you have the vertical alignment, you have the balance. So now it's your overall skills, your mobility. You have to have the strength to hold it. You have to have the static to be able to hold it and so it doesn't move. And then it's the footwork, the flexibility. So I love the kettlebells for that because it's a perfect tool. The dumbbell doesn't work as well. The barbell doesn't work as well. You can do it with anything, but the kettlebell, it just sits very nicely. Plus, it's easy to pass from one hand to another. So yeah. I like playing around with that, and you don't have to go very heavy. My normal would be a 16 or a 20, and I would do these mobility flows. That's sometimes you want to test yourself, try, see if you can do it with a heavier bell. But when the bells are flipping, especially with even 4 kilos, makes a huge difference.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen a lot of your juggling videos, and I do a fair amount of juggling too, and you just do it so consistently and like effortlessly, and your style seems to be like very fluid to me. And
I don't consider myself an expert in juggling. It's not something I've specialized in. I have a few that I like to use. You know, there is a sport of juggling, and it's, you know, there's certain compulsory moves. So I've never really put in the time. Most of the juggles I do is stuff that I'm confident doing indoors.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I don't always get a chance to go outside and practice them on the regular. But yeah, the juggling can go in a very far and wide direction. I just think that as a kettlebell person, you want to have a few go-to juggles, you know, because then you can integrate juggles with the basics. For sure, if you want to specialize in juggle and just only do juggle, you know, a person can take that as far as they want to go with it, right? It's really just putting in the time. So there's still a lot of juggles that I can learn. You know what I mean? I haven't mastered the whole range of the juggles, but yes, that fits in real well with the loaded mobility because of the ability to change hands and just the freedom to be able to throw with one and catch with the other, or throw and catch with the same. You know, so it's very expressive, it's very artistic, and I always see it as in the martial art, because when you move the hands, these are different positions that it's all intention. So these could easily be parries and defense, right? And just being able to have your hands quick and think and move your weight and shift your weight. So in that way, I think the kettlebell is the best I've seen. I don't see any other, you know, there's very few handheld tools that come along that change the game.
Yeah, I think so too. In like with the juggling, or like when we're grappling. So when you're catching this, even if it's like 16 kilograms, 20 kilograms, or, you know, maybe some of the simpler ones go heavier, but it's kind of like grabbing somebody's wrist a little bit, because it's moving. Yeah,
it's moving. So the effective load is more than 16 kilo or 20 kilo, for sure.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it is like snagging somebody's limb out of the air.
Yeah, and I also see like your, because I have your both, I don't know if I can see it right on the camera, your encyclopedia of kettlebell lifting 1 and 2. Hopefully there's not too much blur on that. But they're called encyclopedias for a reason, and there's 2 of them. And this one says 7 hours. It's the first one. The second one, 9 hours. And I've watched all of it, and it is just, there's so many things, but you have such a fluid style, and you're also very strong. So you can just like stand there rigid.
That was like 2005 and 2006.
Yeah.
And it's 2018 now. So
you've evolved a lot since then.
Yeah, lots changed. And, you know, that was at a time when kettlebells was really new. It was only a few years. Pavel had introduced it, Pavel Satsaline, and I was early adapting into that. And so it was a new domain. It was a new venture, and also in DVDs, also in the video technology. There were no one had ever done something so extensive really before or since, with regards to kettlebell. Content-wise, the available stuff, it was, you know, maybe you wouldn't find a video more than 1 hour back in that time. And we came along and we did a 9 hours and 7 hours. So, you know, I definitely had a big impact. Me now looking back, I would see that I would do many things differently. I'm 48 now, not 35. So your body changes. For me, it's for the better though, because I'm more flexible, more skillful. So not as bulky, but far more sustainable. So and you have to adapt with the times. You know, life goes on, and I'm glad we did those DVDs. It was a great experience, and I've gotten a lot of feedback over the years as far as it being very impactful. So, you know, if I were to be prideful, I would say I'm proud of that. But beyond that, it's all about the evolution of the art. And I can still do all those things, but there's a lot of other things that I do now, and I would do a lot of them differently because I have more understanding about. Back then, it was still really new. We didn't have the full, you know, it was a new industry, because prior to 2001, 2002, there was no kettlebell. Kettlebell was not a part of the. Old guys can say, oh yeah, I remember the kettlebells back from the 50s, this and that, sure. But there was no kettlebell in fitness training. There was no swinging of bells, or not even people weren't swinging dumbbells either. But there was no swings and one-arm snatches or any of that. So, you know, now it's commonplace. But honestly, a lot of that stuff I just created on my own because there was nobody teaching it. Paul Bell had his. It was very limited in what it was doing. So then it's just be creative and, you know, what else can we do with these things, and pretty much put it on film. And that's what it was, you know, and it's a resource. And looking back, I think it's all good because I always believe in myself. I would never put something that I think wasn't. But as far as constructing a training, I'm not going to use 220 different techniques or 100 different techniques. I'm going to use probably, depending on what I'm doing, anywhere from 1 to maximum probably 5
Right.
in a workout, you know. So, and then, you know, you got to have the prep and you got to have the cool down, obviously, with that too. So, it's just fun. Looking back, it's just fun and saying, you know, crazy kids. Now I'm a lot more to the point with it. And if I were to make another encyclopedia, it would look very different than the one that I filmed. First one was 13 years ago, I guess now. Yeah.
Are you, yeah,
still relevant. They're still relevant and people still refer to them, and, you know, so that's great. I don't think it's bad. It's just, I look back and I know I can do better now. So
yeah, there's something to be said about if you wait until you're perfect at everything, you're not going to put anything out. And it's you were saying, I know what you mean by at the time this is what you were doing, and that you might do some of the techniques differently now. Not that any of it's bad, but maybe you've modernized it. I believe I know what you mean by that. And just like almost coincidentally, my girlfriend, who has not seen these DVDs, was over last night, and her shoulder blade was like giving her some problems, and she grabbed my 28 kilogram and was kind of like in a bent over row position, and it was kind of just like moving it. I can't really see my arm, but just like over like with the torso parallel to the floor and just letting it pull and move around. It's like that technique. So there's a lot of like that kind of stuff in your so there's a lot of like these kind of almost things that we would do naturally, but nobody had put it together like this. Well, here's, you know, a ton of ideas, and then not that you're expected to go through all of them, but here's a lot of ideas. And then some of them, you know, with like the more modern ways. And then who knows what it's going to look like in another 13 years from now, because it seems like
Yep.
everybody is getting better and better. And your style, I mentioned that, you know, I'm certified by Strong First. That's through Pavel, who you started with. And then you went a different direction. And then from what I understand, and then you created your own way. And I was thinking about getting your certification also, very serious. I more than likely will in the near future, because you're talking about being, you said 49. I just turned 39, and I still want to get stronger, but I want to have like this like more fluid mobility. And yeah, Pavel's stuff kind of does that too, but to me it's more just different. I have a lot of respect for Strong First and all the instructors and the certification. That's why I got the certification. But I'm looking at your way, and I have been since I started kettlebells 10 years ago or whatever it was. And I'm seeing like this fluid way, and what I'm looking for in myself, what I want to get better, is more like your style. And like you're in like full squats, like doing like I don't know if you call them like a duck walk kind of thing and pressing it at the same time, and you're turning while in a full squat, and just the fluid power. So you still have a lot of strength, like static strength, I guess you could call it, or but you still have this like fluid power. So that's what I'm starting to go towards. So I may end up having kind of like a dual citizenship, because I still have respect for Strong First, but I'm looking here and I want to get better at your way also. I think there's a lot to learn.
It's not mutually exclusive. You can take from different sources, and you take the most useful parts and integrate it into your own. There's nothing that's in contradiction or competition. There's more than one way to express things. There's more than one way to use the tool. No one can deny the effectiveness of what Strong's First teaches. You know, there's other applications, there's other emphases of how you would use the kettlebell. And I've always seen myself as, I guess, in the middle. Strong First, Gear Your Voice Sport is two almost polar opposites in how they would apply. And I always have seen IKFF as not one or the other, something different. And certainly from a technical point of view, I recognize the Gear Your Voice Sport is the mastery of the kettlebell as a repetition, you know, the original of what Pavel talks about in the first RKC book, you know. And so if you're going to specialize in the kettlebell, that's the classical. The classical is the clean and jerk and snatch, and it's based upon the mastery of the breathing. You know, it's like Wim Hof says, you have to keep the blood alkaline. You have to deacidify the blood and keep it alkaline. And that's how you can continue with the endurance. So the breathing and the technique that utilizes the least amount of energy for each rep so that you can sustain it. That's the art of Gear Your Voice Sport. RKC and Strong First is very different. Me, I'm coming at it from a martial art, seeing it as a connection to the body. And now we can move, but we also have to have the mastery and all the basics. So where do I look for the mastery? I look more for the Gear Your Voice Sport, because I see that as the evolution of and everything lines up. The history, if you understand the history about how it evolved in Russia, that all lines up. It's a modern, it used to be used a certain way, and then it started being used more in this way, and it was designed with that in mind. So it's like, for me to be an educator, you have to know about all of it. You can't just know about some of it. That's just what I believe. So that's why it's like I say I practice juggle. I don't specialize in juggle, but you know, if you're a kettlebell guy, know a little bit about juggling, know a little bit about Gear Your Voice Sport, you know a little bit about hard style, know a little bit about stupid human tricks or feats of strength or whatever, you know. So that you can't just know this part and then, yeah, I'm a kettlebell. Well, what if the guy has a question about this? You either have to make something up, or you have to turn them away because you can't really help them. So at least if you have experience in all of it, right? That's what I think. That's just responsible. So I never say, oh, don't go there, don't go there. You got these Russian guys, go learn from all the Russians too, you know? So like learn as much as you can. That's how I see it.
Yeah, you have Valery Fedorenko on.
Yeah, he was in my DVD, that, you know, the encyclopedia. We brought him in and for that reason, to show a sport, you know, traditional sport technique at a high level. So
yeah, he's amazing. When I heard about,
he was the first to bring in the Gator voice sport. What Pavel did for kettlebell in fitness, Fedorenko was for the Gator voice sport, and that's just historically accurate. You know, there's a lot of other great, you know, Gator voice sport masters now, but they came well after Fedorenko. Fedorenko was the first in U.S. and you know, so, you know, it's important that people understand that. People know Pavel. He was the first with the kettlebell that made it, you know, a marketing thing. Pavel with John Duquesne. Fedorenko was the first with the Gator voice sport. He was also on my encyclopedia kettlebell DVD. So we collaborated on that. And, you know, and then I was the first to start bringing it around the world. So those are when the history goes, and from the beginning, those are the three names that, you know, and then now you have other guys that came, other Russians that are awesome coaches. So the kettlebell world has changed big time since Rolling Stone magazine 2001. That was the launching point.
Yeah. Fedorenko is, I had a couple lessons from a master instructor under him called Rick Hughes. He's amazing.
In your region, he's in Indianapolis region, right?
Yeah, he lives like 20 minutes away from me. And I had a couple lessons from him, and then he told me about Valerie's 9/11 tribute, and it blew my mind. And for anybody that doesn't know what that is, he did 911 push presses with a 70-pound kettlebell without putting it down. And it took him like an hour and 20 minutes or something like that. And when I first heard about that, I was talking with a friend of mine, and she was like, how many do you think you could do? And I was like, maybe 30. And I was just making something up. I'd never even tried that many. I was like 5 was kind of what I was really thinking. But then I started doing it his way. And the first time I tried it, I did 30. I was like, actually, that wasn't very bad. And I was switching hands every 10 reps. And then I was adding 10 reps per week, just doing it once per week. And I got up to 90. And so I did 90 with 70 pounds without putting it down. And it took me about 20 minutes or about 18 minutes. And it was really unpleasant. But it opened my mind, because it was like, okay, you can either lift a light weight a bunch of times, or you can lift a heavy weight very few times. But this opened my mind to where I was like, you know what? You can lift a pretty heavy weight a bunch of times, and here's how to do it. So it squashed that old paradigm. And so
yeah, his method is really good. His method is great. You know, he has contributed a lot to kettlebell.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. And you were talking about spreading it around the world, and you've mentioned martial arts in your way several times. And I know that you go to a lot of Asian countries, and you're like the as far as I know, the first one bringing it to these countries. And I see the pictures on Instagram and stuff where these are popular. And do you think that your way that is more fluid, more into martial arts, somehow resonates more with that Asian audience than, say, like, I don't want to say, I'm not trying to say anything bad about Pavel, but like more than that way, that's more like maybe like rigid. I mean, it's all, you can't put any of them in an exact category, but
you
know what I mean.
For the students in Asia, I believe that from my point of view, I'm well versed in traditional Asian etiquette with regards to martial arts and with regards to certain cultural. I was a student of Taoism. I was interested in Taoism as a young age when I began martial art study when I was 12. And so going to Asia, I already felt the sense like I understood the communication style and the respect. I recognized my position as the teacher. And so it was just naturally very comfortable. The interaction is very natural, and because I understand the Asian mind in this way. So I can't speak for, for others. And I don't know what they would say about that, but I do believe, and again, when we say Asian, that is very broad. That would be like saying European or even American for that matter. But as we know, could be a big difference between a Louisianan and a Californian and New Yorker, right? So there could be a big difference between a Thai and a Chinese and a Korean, and an Indonesian, So to say Asia gives a general idea, but there's some peculiarities. Chinese, for example, value education, and they're good students in that regard. Indian is also part of Asian. Indians have a tradition of having gurus. It's a part of their spiritual teacher. So there is differences, but I would say I resonate well with the Asian world. I respect the importance that it's a rich history. There's a lot to be learned from the history. I see that the young people have forgotten about it. It's quite unusual because I feel like I know more about their culture than a lot of the young Chinese, for example, because it's becoming modern. They want, America kind of has been the example for the world. I think it's been a bad example in a lot of regards in terms of consumerism, because they want all the brands, they want, the material. And I'm like, goes back 5,000 years, and, certain things about respect and family and etiquette and, so I don't know, it's a mix because the Chinese value education. But I can't say that. That's just what I think. I can't. You have to ask them what they think about it. As far as the rigid, some people like the rigid. Some people like the hard style. That's there. It's a certain discipline. I have no criticism about it. People like to be. So I'm not a military guy. I'm not interested in trying to you're supposed to know how to behave. You're an adult. There's a respect. People are supposed to be self-governing. That's what I believe, self-governance. It's not like, okay, I have to be this hierarchy and tell you all what to do. Now, if there's a thing as a teacher, you got to handle it. But I'm putting more confidence in the individual. I'm not making it dependent upon me. You know what I'm saying? Because it's not about okay, we do this seminar, and then when the seminar is over, you got to be like, okay, what do I do next? And I tell you got to do this next. No, it's more like, boom, I'm putting that information inside of you. Go practice, okay? Go practice. Next time I see you, you're going to be, telling me about all the awesome things that you did in that couple of years or whatever. So that's how I see it. It's not about creating an organization where it's dependent upon some figure. You know what I mean? We're all just regular people. I'm a regular person. I got my specialty, my skills. I have the greatness within me. But everyone has their greatness. It's just I see myself as a teacher. So that's it. Show others how. But I'm hands-on. My thing's hands-on. If I work with you, then I can show you something.
Yeah.
Physically. You know what I mean? It's both my blessing and my curse. So talking and, Tony Robbins, like, motivate me. Okay, but yeah, if I wanted to do that, make a bunch of money and stuff, people come and the money to be, it's like holy rollers. It's like that's not really where I'm at. That's not my interest. So I'm not motivated by the same things of to be famous or to, it's about the message. You're out to help people. We're here to help each other, basically, because what I've realized is that we're all connected. We're all interconnected in some way, whether one is aware or unaware. And again, somebody says, "Oh, well, how can you prove that?" Well, they have to prove it to themselves. I already know. But if you want to prove it, just keep going back in time and trace. And you go back far enough, you'll see that there was tribes, and then they multiplied, and then intermarriage, but there's basically just so many tribes that we all descended from, that populated throughout the earth. So on some level, we're all interconnected. Now, I take that to include the animals and the plants, all the living. And so we're all connected, and how we treat others ultimately is how we treat ourselves. So, and then any slice of the pie that you want to look at, you have your professional, you have your family, you have your relationship, you have your social, right? Different financial, all these different things. You're charitable, you're religious or spiritual, right? We have these aspects. So, what are we here to do? That's how I see it. What are you here to do? What I realize is I'm here to help. I'm here to serve. And what am I good at? I'm strong. I'm healthy. I know how to teach other people to be healthy, and throughout longevity. I can still do everything at 48. It's not old, but if someone peaked out when they're 26, they may have a different experience by the time they're 46, right? So where's your peak? You want your peak to be early?
Yeah.
Or would you kind of let it ride out? So, I know a lot about all this stuff, and in this world, we have to kind of sound the horn, right? Promote. But where I'm best is simply teaching. We move together, and to me, that's really simple, but it's amazing that there's so much misunderstanding about it. Like, where do we begin? So you have to be able to stand. That's the first thing. And maybe if you can't stand, you have to be able to sit. But within that, there's the posture. If you want to call it the core stability, you have the upright. If you're standing, you're sitting, it's that core activation. Everything's lifted. Okay, so standing, that includes the placement of your feet. So your center of mass, relationship to your base. So that's your standing. Breathing. How are you breathing? Okay, so that's fundamental to everything that you're going to do. And then from here, it's the movement. What's the movement? And the movement, then it's the application. So if you put something in your hand, like a bar or a kettlebell or a weapon, that's an extension of this. So if you have control of this, you can practice the skills to get good with the tool, and so when you understand that, and that this is, see, Wim Hof is one of the greatest teachers. Wim Hof?
Yeah.
Wim Hof is one of the greatest teachers of this time because he's emphasis on the breathing. And that's the fundamental to everything. What I'm saying is the breathing, the position, the stance. Now you have those two. You talk about the mind. Well, the mind and the breathing goes together. So the mind, but it's really the breathing and the mind, because the mind makes the decision, and then it's your posture, it's your frame, that's your stance. And then it's the movement. So boom, you're going to move like that. You're going to move like that. You're going to move like that. And you want to get that dialed in. That's the pinnacle of athleticism. When you can get that dialed in to where your weight is exactly where you want it to be, and then boom, you move to the next spot. You know, martial arts is that, pop, you know, the technique, the jab, the kick. So I say, but the weight training, I like the kettlebell because it's more like martial art. It's with the barbell, you have to have a really wide base and kind of you're kind of really locked in this way. With the kettlebell, it's more. With the kettlebell, it's more, you know, you have that freedom with the hands. For me, it feels that way for me. I don't get that same feeling if I'm holding. I think the fat bells, I haven't played around enough with them. I've only played with them a couple of times, but I think the fat bells also will have a potential limitation, though. When you start getting too heavy is how your hand sits. It could
I wanted to play with those. I haven't had a chance to use those yet, but I've been wanting to. They look.
Yeah, those have some. I think probably at moderate weights will be when they start getting too heavy. I think you can risk kind of tweaking your hand. I don't know. It's just my idea. That hasn't happened to me, but yeah, they seem really cool. Yeah,
it'll be interesting what is happening with those in another 10 or 15 years that isn't being done right now.
Yes.
So when we were talking before we were recording, you were talking about training as it's to build strength, but why we're building this strength. And you're talking about how a lot of us maybe are building this strength to cover something up, to cover up some maybe like non-physical weakness. And like your veganism just popped into my mind. You're still vegan, right?
I'm vegan, yeah.
Okay, so is there I don't know how that may tie into it exactly. I was wanting to ask you.
That absolutely connects here. We were talking about pain, is what I said, is that everybody has some pain. And you know, in the culture of training and gym culture and working out and developing your body, this idea of gaining strength, improving in strength. And my observation is that a lot of that is going towards covering some pain that exists. Could be deep-seated, but some pain, emotional. Obviously, there will be an emotional association. And by being very strong, we can face this pain. We can overcome this pain. And the interconnectedness, you mentioned veganism. The interconnectedness of all things. So it goes from person to person. For me personally, it's not so much. I'm more sensitive to the pain of others. You know, some people, they have a lot of pain in their life. It can be ongoing, or it's just memories where they had bad experience and they react, and so they hold on to that pain. Physical pain, you know, it could be anything. Leg always hurting, knee always hurting, back always hurting, shoulder always hurting. Trying to round it. It could be physical pain, but it could be a lot deeper than physical pain. It could be some deep hurt that, you know. But to some degree, all of us have some level of pain. And, you know, for me, I'm a guy that's sensitive to the pain of others, even though I don't feel like I have a lot of my own pain. And when we extend that, it's the interconnectedness of all things. And so we're not separate from, we're actually included with as a part of this earth. And so there's a relationship with everything, both in sight and out of sight, seen and unseen, you know. So not just the people that we interact with that's closest to us, the family, but even the society and how we interact. And then we take it and we're looking at the earth and the ecology and how we treat the planet. And we're looking at the animals and how we interact with the animals. And everything that we believed or taught that was true, and our habits of this is how we've always done it, so this is how we continue to do it. All of those things, when we start looking at it, for me, I see that there's a lot of pain. So more strength, what is it for? I guess that's really what we're coming full circle with this conversation. All the strength that we can accomplish, so the weight keeps going up, we're getting more fit, we're getting more strong. What am I ultimately going to do with that strength? So now I'm strong. I'm stronger than you, or I'm the strongest one, you know, in this building, in this city, in this town, in this country. I'm the world champion, strongest guy, period. What am I going to do with that strength? You know, so, and I think ultimately that strength is to lift up those who are not strong enough, those that do not feel strong. And because however somebody wants to look at it, if they want to take, you know, if they're a big sci-fi guy and they want to put it in the sci-fi term, when the ship comes, it's like everybody's got to be on it before it's going to take off. It's like that, you know what I mean? So the strongest and the weakest, they're connected. And I think if someone's really strong, they start understanding in their mind and using that if I think I'm so strong, what am I going to do with this strength? Like, how can I use it for good? You know, it's not for me to say for others. I have to say for myself, we have to ask that questions of ourselves. What am I strong for? And how do I use this strength? It's about helping others, you know. So you mentioned veganism. Yeah, I became vegan because I believe that. I believe that to the core. I'm not better than the animals. The animals are my friends. I learn from them. Somebody's going to say, oh, you can't be strong. I'll say, well, can you do what I can do? You know, like if I'm less strong because I don't eat meat, I'll take it. I'll be a little less strong because I'm far stronger here and I'm far stronger here. So the muscle is really the least of it, because I feel that we come from the earth, right? The human, we come from the earth and then we return to the earth. And so in that in-between time that we're here, it's really about what we believe. It's really about principles. So for me, it's an easy decision because it's discipline. And it really comes down to self-discipline, because to be hungry, that's a base instinct. But a disciplined man can learn to control his hunger. If it's just a taste is it's like an addiction. You have the taste for it because there's something, it's stored in your liver, in your blood, in your fatty tissue, and you have the taste for it. So you feel the need to eat it to satisfy the taste, but the taste itself is still of the ego. I mean, the natural person doesn't actually have tastes. They have hunger. The taste is not, I guess what I'm saying is I don't live for my taste. Like, oh, I want some ice cream, or oh, I want some candy. Okay, well, you know, how strong are you? Like a little kid that needs to feed their sweet tooth. You know, no offense to anybody, but you know, it's just how I see it. If you can't control your diet, if you can't control your hunger, if you can't, I train myself to go hungry, like not in purpose, but a lot of times I won't have food, especially when I'm traveling, maybe for a day, or have a little bit of food in a day. I don't eat much, you know, I don't necessarily have to eat much because It's not the amount of food, it's the nutrition that you get from the food and how your body uses it. But the point is not to be a slave to your taste. That's what I think, for me, not to be a slave to the taste. And, you know, cravings, you can overcome cravings. It depends on the food you eat. If you eat a lot of animal food, a lot of cream, a lot of meat, you're going to have taste for that. You're going to have a taste for animal fat. You're going to have a taste for the cream. But if you're not eating that stuff, the taste goes away. I don't get cravings for ice cream or milkshakes, or, you know, I don't get cravings for like bacon, or don't get the cravings because I don't eat it. So my body is not. So, you know, stuff like this about just being honest with ourselves. We all have our strengths and weaknesses, but, you know, if one can discipline their hunger, they can discipline all other aspects of their life, because that's the most fundamental. You know, there's that, and then I would say there's the sexual one. So discipline yourselves in those areas. The hunger is the first one, definitely. You know, like if you can't control your hunger, then you do not have self-control. That's what I think. You can be strong, but the strongest guy is not as strong as they would be if they had self-control.
Yeah. Yeah. I quit eating meat when I was 15, and I just turned 39, and I don't miss it at all. And I've been vegan, probably most of that time, including like the last 5 years, strict vegan. And I was like vegan on and off up until then, but gave up meat, just this whole story in itself. But like once I quit, that was it. There was no craving whatsoever. And it and kind of thing where I may not eat anything for a day, maybe not eat hardly anything for a couple days, or and do you think that affects like our hormones in a positive way, like this fasting, which it's not like I have a plan like, oh, I'm going to do this 12-hour fast or 1-day fast, but I've read that like this can have like a positive effect on your hormones. And do you like
I think the only way to know for sure the answer to that question is via blood tests, is to do before and after blood tests and measure. So I could have an idea, but I can't say that I have an educated opinion, because I could be completely wrong, you know. Yeah. The blood test would show the hormonal levels, and then you would be able to more empirically say, okay, you're aside from hormones, what I have experienced is that fasting offers a lot of health benefits. I can imagine that, again, you can mess yourself up too. So it really depends on how it's facilitated going into it, during, and coming out. So it is a bit of an art form to fast and do it intelligently. And then again, it depends on the amount of time you're talking and what kind of fast. If it's just water versus if you're having teas and juices. But at least periodic fasting, I'm sure, would improve your overall health, improve your intestinal health. Why the hormones are affected, I'm not sure. It's all integrated. So perhaps by cleansing your intestinal tract, it allows better circulation and in turn increased hormonal activity. You know, but you can also suppress your testosterone and elevate the estrogen by fasting, if you know, going too long or not really understanding your body. So it's tricky. This type of knowledge that we have access to, we don't normally get the really deep understanding of the knowledge, because the application of, there's nothing good or bad by itself. Fasting can inherently be beneficial. It can be very dangerous as well.
Right. It's got to find the middle way, as they say, right?
At least fasting for, half the day. I think that's basically good advice for everybody. Yeah. Like, don't constantly have stuff going through your intestines. Give it some break. But to go beyond that into really that's not really fasting. People call it fasting, but it's not, really fasting. Like, if you eat dinner, then you go to sleep, and then you eat breakfast, that's technically a breakfast, but that's just because you were sleeping. It's not really a fast. So, but I'm into fast periodically. I haven't done it in a while, but I've done up to like 15-day fast, and
wow.
felt really, really amazing.
Yeah.
There's a lot to it for longevity, for sure. Cleaning the skin and getting from your body.
The kind of weird segue, but I was just watching how you're like moving around there. I can't tell what is in your hands or what you're doing, but
Baseball bat. I'm spinning that. Loosen back a little bit.
Yeah, well, that's even kind of more interesting how I'm segueing. So I'm trying to work with David Weck on getting him scheduled for a podcast. He said he would do it, and we're trying to figure that out. I'm really excited to have him on. And I found out about him through you. And maybe if I would have saw him like, oh, the Bosu ball guy, then Bosu balls are silly. Why would I want to pay attention to this guy? But I learned about him through you, and it was like, well, he must be legit then, because you didn't like need him to be.
Yeah, David Weck is the premier, I would say, applied biomechanics. As far as if you want to learn how to run faster, David's the premier guy in the world, no doubt. And he's not really well known because he's known for the product Bosu. Yeah. The product, I should say, the Bosu is known. But he has many other products that he's invented, and his knowledge of really how to improve your balance and run faster is the best of the best. So.
Yeah, I've seen he's showing a lot of videos of his son is doing awesome in baseball, and so I see him posting a lot of videos of his son. I know he's working with a pro and stuff, but he's showing like the running, and then he's like, I didn't invent this stuff, but this training method is new because these other coaches were trying to coach you out of they want like the rigid torso when you're running, so you don't lose energy, so there's not like a energy leak or something like that. And he's like, what? He's like looking at Usain Bolt. He's like, actually, the fastest guy in the world is doing it right, where like Michael Johnson or somebody on the video is saying that he's doing it wrong. And I know that you were like part of developing some of his method, like the coiling core and like spinal engines stuff. And
the spinal engine comes from some research, earlier research. I may be butchering his name, Gretowski. I'm butchering the name, but it comes from the work of a doctor, the spinal engine. But David just kind of looked deeper into it and started realizing the applications for locomotion. Coiling core. I mean, these are all David's innovations. Coiling core, definitely, I've contributed a lot to it because it's very part and parcel with internal martial arts. David's figured out a lot of things. He's figured out a lot about, spirals and fascial lines and really how to train it. And no one else has. Thomas Myers wrote the book on the fascial lines, and David's the one that's came along and actually developing exercises and equipment to train it in a way that results in, and faster is faster, as David says, and that he's correct, because the eye and the sky don't lie. That if everybody's getting faster, that shows that the technique is an improvement. So, yeah, it's going against old advice that is outdated and poor advice for, the stiff core is not appropriate for running fast. That's heavy lifting. So you need to have a coiling core.
Right. Yeah, so I told you when I was starting to like try Valerie's way of the push press, and I got up to 90 reps with 70 pounds. What kept me from going to 100 was I read Stuart McGill's book, and because in like Pavel's book, it said if you want to know why not do kettlebell sport or the kettlebell sport rack, read Stuart McGill's book. So in between my 90 and that 100, I read Stuart McGill's book, and I have it. I think he's brilliant. His reputation is real. But so I read his book, and I'm like, okay, I'm going back to hard style because I'm like walking around like RoboCop, afraid to move my spine. And then I'm like, okay. And then he wrote out this like kind of a public letter um, arguing the concept, not the person, of the rigid spine versus the coiling spine, and so like why it's okay to move your spine. And he wasn't talking about kettlebell sport specifically, David wasn't, but it got me kind of thinking more. And then I'm looking at what you're doing, and I'm like trying to put all this stuff together, because just like you're talking about longevity, when I'm 80 years old, 100 years old, I don't want to just be in a wheelchair talking about how good I used to be. I want to be moving around. I want to be healthy and strong and mobile, and I don't want to mess myself up. I want to give myself, and I want to teach my students, the people that pay me to know stuff and teach them. I have to keep learning and keep my white belt on and while I'm learning stuff. And so if I can look at David Weck, oh, the Bosu ball guy, Bosu balls are silly. All right, I used to think that. I didn't know who he was at the time, but I thought Bosu balls, and I think a lot of what people do with them is silly. But then like he's talking about it and how he's a ball guy. Oh, this isn't silly at all. This is actually really high level. This makes a lot of sense, and he can prove it. He's not just marketing. He's real numbers, real science. He's really an innovative, pushing the edge. And so I'm trying to stay on the cutting edge and learn from the very best. So can you, can you explain a little bit more, like what the coiling core, like maybe how it applies to kettlebells and martial arts? You mentioned
David is the premier guy right now in the world as far as next level. Not even the edge. None of the other big names none of the big names is. Everybody's going to have to learn what David's doing because he's tapped into things that no one else was seeing.
I believe that.
As far as coiling core, that's a technique to develop the deep lat. As far as movement, it's from the lat. That's basically what his system is teaching. It's not swinging your arms. It's pulsing. It's head over foot. Head over foot is balance. And he's got these pulsers that see if I can find it here. Yeah, he's got these pulsers that are training the coiling core and the head over foot, training the connective tissue. And it's just, it's changing the game. It's already starting, and it's going to continue. Still mostly unknown, but the Weck method pulsers really are the new item, the game changer. I've been to fitness shows, going to the big fitness shows since 2000. It was the first IDEA and URSA trade shows I went to back in 2000 when Bosu was brand new. David had just invented it. He was still making them by hand in the early shows. And, that was probably the biggest thing to come along that was fundamentally different in a very long time. Because back in that time, 2000, people were standing on Swiss balls and trying to do their different exercises on top of Swiss balls. Paul Chek was doing it, Juan Carlos Santana. Paul Check lifting weights on the Swiss ball. David comes along and figures out how to take a half a ball to make it solid on one and unstable on the other. And BOSUs continue to sell around the world everywhere. So David had the good fortune of having a product that was very successful. And so he took that time and researched for the past 20 years and looking at the best athletes and picking out. And, so it's no accident. It's just the culmination of being a true student and watching in slow motion the best movers and the best athletes and seeing their tendencies. So he's developed this understanding about double down pulsing and using your lats rather than keeping your ridge core and swinging your arms, which is the conventional model. Mm-hmm. He's teaching. Yeah, and if you watch all the great athletes do it anyway, they always pulse, but we've never called it pulsing. It wasn't being taught, so that the athletes were there in spite of the coaching, not because of the coaching. And in many regards, the strength conditioning coaching lags far behind the actual abilities of the athlete, and they're wasting their times having to do. And, and if you do a program, your athlete doesn't get hurt and he has a good year, then, they'll come back and you get credit for it. But honestly, all you're really wanting to do is not, keep them on the field, not let them get hurt. So very few trainers are having them really develop to the next level. And there's been cases. I know Marv Marinovich, when he was working with, Adam Archuleta, he helped them a lot. But you don't hear about those stories very often. And David's the kind of guy that can fundamentally change an athlete from, it's all in your gait. It's all about gait. So, and if you look at the hierarchy, like if you look at the weight room and you want to divide the movement patterns, some use 7, some use 8. We got the vertical push, vertical pull, horizontal push, horizontal pull. You have the glute hip dominant movements. You have the knee quad dominant movements. You have the core midline stability, dynamic stability. And then you have locomotion. So locomotion's not inside the weight room. Locomotion's outside the weight room. Everything else, kettlebell, barbell, standing in one place. Standing in one place. So if you do vertical or horizontal, push, pull, squat, standing in one place. So if your whole system's and you're not moving around, you're leaving out a big, right? So locomotion is really the whole thing. That's athleticism. That's the true athleticism, is the locomotion, the ability to move. So in that regard, David's is far and away beyond all the and Stuart McGill and everyone else, they have to. Stuart McGill's a biomechanic specialist for the lower back, highly respected, and and so that's his area, low back disorder. And for heavy lifting, definitely that's the same advice you're going to be using for doing heavy deadlifts, heavy squats. But what David's talking about is locomotion and moving from point A to point B, which involves one side short, one side long, so deep compression. So that's the royal coil, is to bring this shoulder back and down, this hip up in front. That's the royal coil. Yeah, and then you have head over foot, boom, and then it's the spinal engine. The spinal engine is doing this, and that's how it moves forward. Mm-hmm. That's your ass going forward. So you want so to do this and swing the arm is not productive. It's basically here. And he figured that out. No one else has. And in a couple of years, everyone will look back and be like, of course, why didn't we always know that? Mm-hmm. But yeah, he's just he's a genius. And the sooner people find out about it, the better. The WEC method pulsing, it's changing the game.
Yeah, I think it really helps to have, like I said, I found out about him through you, which kind of opened the door for because I already respected what you were doing. So I guess just like more people that are in your position that you don't, you're not just trying to get like fame off of him or something like that, or he's not trying to use you for fame. It's just like, here's this.
We're legit friends, but you know, a lot of times when you're resonating at a certain level, you attract similar people and you become connected to, and it's like, you know, he's a game changer in what he does. I guess I'm a game changer in what I do. We do different things, but it's complementary. And yeah, I mean, we've been lifelong, for not lifelong, but you know, since 2000, so for a very long time.
Wow.
Friends. I have the access to be able to his new discoveries. I've always been able to have access to those new discoveries sooner than. And he's had a lot of things that never made it big. Bosu's the biggest so far, but now the WEC method pulsars are going to be magnitudes bigger than Bosu. It's going to be everywhere. Everyone's going to be running with them, walking with them, because it makes you faster.
Yeah, I want to order a pair for sure. Or like, I guess it's like there's a few different ones. So depending on like how far you're going to run, you use
different size. I would start with the 8. You got to condition the connective tissue. You know, 8 ounce. I would say 8 ounce. You know, they start with like 2 ounce up to 16 ounce right now. Okay. I think. So, you'll eventually probably want to get different sets, but just as far as like a go-to, I would say an 8 would be a good, at least for your first month. Condition this.
Yeah, I do plan on ordering those soon. I'm part of that Facebook group that's like the inner circle thing, and I'm
pulsars.
What's that?
Pioneers of pulsars.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm in that one. I meant a different one. I might be in that one too, because I always try to join whatever it is that he's doing.
Yeah, the Pioneers of Pulsars is the group about the pulsing. That's the one where he's putting the information out.
Okay, I'll have to make sure I'm in that one, because I haven't really been able to. Yeah, I haven't really been able to run. I had this knee injury from jiu-jitsu it's pretty much better now, and I was just kind of like jumping around the other day on some logs and stuff. I'm like, I think I might be able to like run maybe a couple 100 feet and be okay, because I don't want to go backwards with this injury. But I might be able to run just like a little bit and kind of get used to it more, like real light jogging but I wanted to get those and start, you know, figuring that help. So I'm like studying his method, but not really applying it a lot. So I was wanting to.
Yeah, when you're pulsing, you're not running. It's different. You're pulsing.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm trying to get what he's talking about. It's like a drinking from the fire hose sort of thing with him to me. And
you got to feel. When you feel, you know, that's the. But yeah, when you're pulsing, you're not hitting so much with you're taking a lot of the stress off the lower and using the upper body fascial harness to absorb. So
with this like coiling core, are you applying this to your kettlebell training, or is it just different?
Yeah, you can apply it to everything. Yeah. And
is that maybe it's different when you have 2 kettlebells, but with one, is there like if you're doing like a
with one is going to be a lot easier for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so these are the same kind of concept. So if I'm working on more like my what I was going to ask you about next is, because I am serious about getting your certification, and I don't know when you're going to be anywhere near me doing that in the next however many months. But I was going to ask like what's like the best way to like start preparing for that, and so if somebody like wants to like truly learn your method, which I've copied your moves.
Go to IKFF.com and look in the certification tab, and click on level 1. Scroll down halfway and you'll see assessment, and the assessment will list what your level 1 test is. So I would say the best way for you to start is to work on being able to get through that test as it's
okay. And sorry. And so is there videos also that like, this is how you expect it to be done?
You'll have to go onto the YouTube channel
Okay.
and different. Yeah. I have to put a video, actually. That's a good reminder point as far as how it should be done. Yeah, it's described as far as the physical tests. So there's no video for it there.
Okay. Yeah.
That's a good point. Add that to the website as well.
Yeah, I'd like to see that because I know it's. I'll probably have to alter some things. And so.
Well, technique. You either do it correctly or you don't. I don't grade style, because style is how you. I grade things like fixation. You know, fixation is not subjective. You have to control it. You know, as far as how, if you're going to grab it like this or like this or like this, no, it's not, because we're not robots. So you don't make someone have to move a certain way.
I like that.
They understand how to extend the legs, how to lock out, how to have correct center line.
Yeah, I like that. I call my own style freestyle kettlebell training because it's like I think of it as like when I'm at the end of my when I'm at the end of my path. The way I see it is when I look back, I don't want to see people following me, but what I want to see is a bunch of paths coming off of my path. So I want to teach people what I know, and then have them figure stuff out on their own. And like I teach kids from right now it's like 7 years on up, and adults also. And so like part of the time I'm like, yes, this is exactly how you do this when we're working on squats or something. You know, it's not like it's so freestyle that valgus claps is okay, or stuff like that. So there is like, yes, this is how you do it. But there's also a time when it's like, okay, now just make up stuff. You have some fundamentals. And I have this 9-year-old who, like, I posted some video and you can see him doing what he started called the spider. It's not like a technique that I was really showing him, but it's kind of like a snatch. And, you know, like you're doing like the figure 8 between the legs, and it's usually you're not raising it up. You're just doing like this figure 8 between the legs. Well, he's like doing this snatch and coming down between his legs, and he's doing this. I didn't show him that. I showed him the snatch. I showed him the figure 8. And now I'm like, okay, now just do whatever you want. Crank up the radio.
Make your own style.
Yeah,
so.
And it's like, and I thought, that's actually really cool. And he's 9 years old, and I'm thinking if he polishes that up a little bit, there might be people that are like at your level that are like, hey, you know what? That's cool. I'm going to start doing that. And it's like, why not? Why can't, at 9 years old, why can't he learn fundamentals and make something up before he has like all the creativity squished out of him? And I could go on and on with you for forever, but I'm about out of questions. Is there anything else that you were wanting to get into?
No. Thanks for your time. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, and thanks for your questions as well.
Yeah, I really appreciate you having you on. I've been a big fan for a long time. This is really cool for me. I really appreciate it. And so how can people get a hold of you for training or certifications? And
you should follow me on Instagram. It's Steve Cotter, IKFF. So follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Steve Cotter at Steve Cotter IKFF. Steve Cotter IKFF. And YouTube channel, IKFF channel.
Yeah, very cool.
Website is IKFF.com.
Yeah, very cool. Thank you again. So what are like some parting words for us? What are your what do you want to leave us with?
Love yourself, forgive yourself, believe in your own goodness, and keep your eye on the prize.
I like it. thank you again. And that's a good way to end it. I'm going to stop recording and then I'll talk to you for a second off the recording.
Take care.
All right. Thanks.